So, like I said, I'm AJ Ghergich. I'm the founder and CEO of Ghergich and Company. And today I'm excited to share some research with you on featured snippets. So we're actually in the process of completing a big study with SEMrush. If you're not familiar with SEMrush, they are a fantastic keyword research tool. And what's interesting about this study that we did, where you see a lot of keyword research studies, it'll be say, okay, it's 1 million keywords, but the keywords are kind of random. And so what we did here was we actually looked at around 80 million keywords. And then from that, we took a subset of 1.4 million that had featured snippets. So it was a pretty in-depth study. And I want to share with you guys, what we found. And I think it'll be very actionable. So briefly about our company and why I'm actually even focusing on featured snippets is, Ghergich and Company is brought in to do high-end content. We do very visual work, infographics, in-depth articles with charts and graphs and all those types of things. The main KPIs that we're focusing on are earning links, social, and traffic. But what's happening is, whether it's an enterprise client or a small business client that we're working with, across the board, everyone going, hey, what are featured snippets? How do I get those, right? And so the conversation isn't us pushing them to say, hey, you need them. Everybody thinks that they need featured snippets, but there's a lot of confusion out there on how to optimize for them, how to earn them. And so today, hopefully, we can shed some light on that for you guys and give you some good info. So I'm not going to go over, I'm assuming this is a more advanced audience, so I'm not going to go over featured snippets specifically. I do, on the next slide, there is a link to a course presentation I did this year that is a better on featured snippets. But briefly, show up in an organic search, and they show up as table listings, paragraphs, or list. And so you can earn these, and just like you're earning a top position 1, 2, or 3, it's all organic, and they show up just in different formats. Like I said, at the bottom of this slide, you'll see a link to a presentation. If you want a better primer on them, go check that out, and it'll definitely point you in the right direction. So why should we focus on featured snippets, right? So what's the point of it all? The biggest point, I would say, is that you can leapfrog your competition to position 0. That's a term that Dr. Pete from Moz coined. And it's position 0 because as SEOs, we've always been focused on, how many keywords can I get in the top 5? How many keywords can I get in the top 3? And so on and so forth, right? All organic. Well, the cool thing about featured snippets is they jump the top position into position 0. So you're ahead of everyone, literally. And the cool thing is you don't have to pay for it. Normally, to get ahead of everybody, right, you would have to buy a PPC. You would have to buy AdWords. In this case, it's all free organic traffic. So the other thing that you need to look at is that you are able to answer your customers' actual questions. And that's a really good benefit I think featured snippets kind of forces you to do. In your content strategy, you should be doing this, of course. You should look at all the questions that your customers are asking throughout the buying cycle. But this makes sure, if you're going to optimize for featured snippets, you have to ensure that your content is actually optimized to answer these questions, or you're not going to. And so it's a dual benefit there. The other thing is that you can get featured snippets throughout, the purchasing cycle. So you can earn them all the way from, awareness all the way through the decision phase, where awareness might be somebody searching for, what the heck is this? And then the decision phase is, hey, can I compare the price of XYZ to another company? So all of those tend to have featured snippets, and they're all sitting there waiting for you to earn them. And so you can do that in pretty much any niche. I've never seen a niche so far that didn't have some featured snippets, because people always have questions, and that's what featured snippets are really aimed at doing, answering those questions and pointing the customer right to the best answers for those questions. So again, like I said, we worked with SEMrush, 1.4 million featured snippets analyzed, and let's go ahead and dive in. So briefly on this, the goal is a little bit different. My team had seen a lot of questions, prepositions, and comparison search phrases produce featured snippets, but we didn't have the data to back it up. It's just what we were seeing on the ground. And so what we wanted to do with SEMrush is look at 29 specific search phrases, but they were all questions, prepositions, and comparisons. And we wanted to see if the data backed up what we were kind of seeing out there with earning these for clients. And so I'm going to walk you through this broken down section by section. And I think it'll be pretty interesting. So first off, we'll look at questions. And these are the questions that we analyzed. You know, the basics, you know, who, what, when, where, how, all that kind of stuff. But you can see we have a few more than maybe you see in some of the other studies like do and is, can, which, those kind of things. And what you would want to do with a list like this is you could take these type of, you know, here's the questions that we see producing featured snippets, right? Take this and just apply it to your niche. So right now I have it looking at cloud storage, you know, why is cloud storage a good idea, right? That is an awareness phase search. And so, you know, you can go all the way through to decision. So it can fit any niche because these are questions that would fit for pretty much anything. So use this list with your niche keywords and you'll start to find tons of featured snippets. I'm going to break down here in a second, you know, a really good view of this, but I'll give you some of the key findings right away. Questions specifically were fantastic at earning featured paragraph snippets. So if you're looking at a keyword and it's a question, 9 times out of 10, it's going to be a paragraph snippet that you're trying to optimize for. Now, in each of these, you will see some kind of rule breakers, like how and have are questions, but we found that they earned list at a high rate, and which was pretty good at earning tables. So you can't say it's every question paragraph, right? It's not that neat and tidy. It'll be more clear when I show you this slide of the breakdown. So you can see we have all the questions listed in red, okay? And then we have the table, the list, and the paragraph, the 3 forms of snippets that you can earn, and the percentage that each question earned for that. You'll notice I will say what is missing down at the bottom because we're still processing that data. So we just literally just got this. So let's take a look at this. If you look, we've highlighted paragraph in red at the top, and you can see just huge numbers like who, 95%, why, 99.9%, basically 100% of the time, why will produce a paragraph snippet. But it is interesting to see how and have and which react a little bit differently, and they're more optimized for list. One caveat I'll tell you, you might look at this and say, well, you know, how is actually better for paragraph because it's 51%. But you got to think about it this way. Paragraphs are all over the place. That's the main thing you're going to run into. Lists are, you know, less pronounced, but tables are even rarer. So as you go down, when you see something like 50% on something like a list or a table, it's actually a huge percentage. And in the case of it usually is that there's just not enough optimized content. Google would like to show more lists, but maybe they don't have enough lists to show. So when you're looking at this, sure, look at the, you know, what's getting the top percentages, but also be mindful that, you know, even though which down there is showing 16% for a table, that's actually a really good score for tables. And so that, if I were optimizing keyword, I would definitely consider looking at which search phrases as a table, which makes sense. It's almost like a comparison chart. So the next thing we looked at was prepositions. So, you know, like cost for cloud storage. And again, same thing. You can apply this to any niche. Just insert your keywords. You'll find tons of featured snippets. And so we ran these are the ones that we were using, that we were, you know, finding featured snippets on. And so we wanted to see if the data backed that up. So the key findings here is that, interesting, the prepositions were really good at earning list. So questions were really great at earning paragraphs. Prepositions are really great at earning list. There are a few little rule breakers, like for, excuse me, was really good at earning tables, and like was horrendous at earning list. It basically was really good at earning paragraphs. So you can't just go in, like I said, blindly and say, okay, you know, it's only going to earn list. So if you look at the breakdown again, the questions and prepositions here are in red, and then we've highlighted list. And you'll see like 2, 51%. And that piggybacks off of how in the questions, which also had a high list finding. So when you're looking at this, again, if you break down, you do all your keyword research and you break down all the questions that you're going to get, and then you find all the ones that you're a target for featured snippets, you've got to put it in the right format. So with preposition, if you're doing a keyword with like in it, you're going to format it for a paragraph. And I'm going to show you how to format that here in a second. But I just want to drive that home, is use this chart to tell you the format Google wants that content in. So lastly, we were looking at comparison searches, and I love comparison searches because they're end of buying cycle, decision phase, cloud storage price. That's someone who's looking to purchase, right? They're way down the line versus someone saying, what is cloud storage, right? Or when you're doing, cloud storage comparison type search, that is phenomenal to be able to take that for your brand, control that, and paint yourself in a hopefully good light, and get free traffic there that can convert. So the key findings here was that comparisons were great at earning tables. And as I mentioned, price, I mean, that's ROI right there, just sitting on the table for you. Where I actually made a mistake with our team is we assumed, because we didn't have the data yet, that versus would do phenomenal at earning tables. We already saw that the comparisons were earning tables at a higher rate than other things. But again, we wanted to let's look at the data and back it up, right? So we had also just lumped versus in there too, because it makes sense. Like you're literally comparing, this computer, laptop, Mac versus PC or whatever you're comparing, right? So we were dead wrong on that when you looked at the data. So if you look here at versus, it is horrendous at earning tables, 0.82%. So it's 99% of the time when they have a versus keyword phrase, it's best to format that as a paragraph. And so that was something where the data told us opposite of what I was thinking. But overall, what we were seeing on the ground actually held true. So if you see, we've highlighted table in red, you can see that comparison compared, their 16s, 13s, price 38%. And again, remember, you're saying, okay, well, wait a minute, it's 83% paragraph. Well, there's not a lot of tables out there that are formatted, optimized. There's a lot more just content that they can snippet into a paragraph. So when you see a higher number than normal for tables, jump on that, format some of your content in tables, and you'll be rewarded for that. So here's the overall breakdown, and you can kind of see the tic-tac-toe pattern happening here, right? So overall questions had a 92%. For paragraphs, and prepositions had 29% for list, and then you can see again comparisons for tables. And so when you're breaking down your keywords, when you look at all the questions that are being asked and start putting your content towards it, remember the format. So you don't just create some content, think about the format, because if you bucket these out and you make it in the right format, you're going to get a much better return on that content investment. So then the question becomes, okay, got it. I want it. Position 0, free traffic. Thanks. I'm going to optimize this in the proper format. What now? So we took this a little bit further. So we actually downloaded all the feature snippets and then analyzed them. And so it's kind of interesting information. So the paragraph snippets ended up coming out with an average of 45 words, which I'll show you in a second is spot on with what we've seen in some other studies. We also broke that down into characters as well, so you can kind of see where those are at. And then the list, how many items and words were in them, and how the maximum that shows for a list. There are some things though that I don't want you to do with this data. So I don't want you to look at list and say, okay, well, if I'm making a list, the average item is 4, so I'll just make a list with 4 or 5. Longer lists are better, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But you can definitely use this information. What you're more concerned with list is the maximum that they show. than the average. Although with paragraph, you're definitely going to key in on the average. Same thing with table. You're looking at the amount of columns and rows. Again, I'm more interested there with the maximum number of rows. There are almost always going to be 3 columns, but the row maximum is what varies greatly there. So SEMrush did a study earlier in the year, and they found that 40 to 50 words were the sweet spot for paragraphs featured snippets. So our study comes in, bam, 45. So we now have 2 studies backing this up. So what do you do with that? So a lot of people, they think like, okay, well, I have to make featured snippet content. I'm going to write an article like that. I look at it a different way. You're already making content. Just have sections of your content optimized for featured snippets. So I'll give you, for instance, let's say, you had a section of your content on cloud storage that was, what is cloud storage? So you might have a header, like an H1 tag or an H2 tag, say, what is cloud storage? And then underneath that, you answer it. And if you start to look at your content under this lens of the 45 words that come right after the question, are they the best answer? Did I go off on a snarky tangent for a second and then answer the question? So you need to optimize your content in those 45, 50, 60 words, right in that range, to nail that answer. And the cool thing is if you do it and you hit publish and a week later you don't have the snippet, change it. Edit it, hit save, and rinse and repeat until you steal that snippet from someone else. So you want to think about your content creation and working featured snippets, earning them into what you're already doing. You're not just going to go out and make like a 45-word, piece of content just for this featured snippet, and that's it. So remember when I said on the list that longer lists are better. You can see I was doing a little research here on getting ready for this presentation. The reason why is, do you see where it cut off at 8? And that's where it's saying is like, these are the longer list. If you look at the more items right there, it's telling the user, look, there's more, right? So this is 15 ways, and they can see that in the title, but it's also telling them right there. The other way is if you have to have a shorter list. Let's say you don't just put fluff in there, like that would lead to bad content, right? But let's say your list, for some reason, has to be 4, right? And so you're not going to get that more items. What you can do, though, is just make sure, I wouldn't have every single thing like it. Look at number 4, arrive early. But what if that was all it was? So you had 1, 2, 3, 4, and it was like boom, 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 boom. What would happen then is Google would just show the answer with no real incentive to click through. And so by truncating on the end, by using more words, it leads the user to want to engage more and click through. So when you're making a list, make them longer if at all possible. And if you can't do that, at least use 5, 10 words out to the side so you get the truncation and the incentive to click through. So when you're doing an optimized list, now this is just a straight up bullet point or 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. What you want to do, you can see here I have things never to do, pull on Superman's cape or spit into the wind, right? So what you're looking at on the right is just some basic HTML. If you don't do HTML, don't worry about it. Look at what I have in red. All I'm doing is saying, hey, we use roles to mark up our HTML so that we can tell Google what's going on. So when you see here, H1 role, hey, this is a heading. UL role, this is a list. This is a list item. And doing this, I want to be clear, doing this is not going to earn you the featured snippet. Doing this is just ensuring that you have really clean code, that you don't have funkiness going on that makes it hard for search engines to process your data. The other thing I'll say about optimized lists is you don't have to do them. I think the misconception is that you have to do them almost how I have it here, right? Like, pull on Superman's cape, spin into the wind, number 3, number 4, number 5. What you can actually do is you could have number 1 and then 300 words of content, 2, 3 paragraphs. And then you have number 2, and then you have number 3, and you could have a 1,500-word article that was a 6-thing list, and that's totally fine. As long as it's clean and Google can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then as long as the beginning of those paragraphs is something that they can pull, you can earn the feature snippet, and you'll see those all the time now when you look around. So it's not just, you know, a straight list. It can be an article with sections, and Google's perfectly adept at snagging those and truncating them down. So same thing here with your tables. I have, you know, example I used at Dreamforce with Rock versus Samsung Galaxy. You know, they both fit in your pocket, but only one randomly explodes. And you can see here again, if your eyes are crossing over, it's just simple HTML. And we're using roles again to tell Google what we're doing. Hey, this is a heading, this is a grid, this is a row header, this is a specific row, and it's just clean code. And so when you are talking with your programming team, just tell them, I want clean, old school tables, nothing crazy, funky that Google is having a hard time reading, that, you know, has to have all kinds of things enabled to read it. Just clean, simple tables that we've had forever work fantastic at earning snippets. So this one here, I don't have the research yet. So this is just anecdotal, what I'm seeing out there. We're going to do another study and try to look at images. But here's what I see. 9 times out of 10, Google changes the image to around 285 by 160. So when you see a featured snippet and it has an image next to it, I mean, you totally want that. That's going to make it more attractive, more visual, right? It's usually 285 by 160, which is quite small. And if you'll notice, a lot of them, especially on like Retina, it's just pixelated and looks like crap. And that's because, you know, it wasn't formatted to be that small. So if you're gonna go into earning featured snippets and you're like, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna segment my content, I'll do all this stuff, don't forget about images. And the basic rule of thumb is landscape, horizontal rectangles. If you just do that, you'll be fine. I've given you some sizes here, like 600 by 337. That perfectly downsamples to 285 by 160. So you'd be fine with that. But again, this isn't gospel. You'll see random sizes. You'll see, I've seen huge ones show up. I'm just showing you what I see the most. I mostly see 285 by 160-ish. And so if you just kind of follow those general formats for your images, they'll come out much better and they'll look a lot crisper and less pixelated when you do earn the featured snippet. Briefly, I'm going to talk just about 2 tools. In my other presentation, I'll talk about some more tools. So if you're out there going, okay, that's great, how do I find all these questions? There's a ton of tools out there. So Answer the Public, it's a free tool. And you can see all I did was enter in cloud storage, right? So I entered in cloud storage and I have 131 questions that come back. You can see, you know, which cloud storage, and then they just start listing the questions. Which cloud storage has the best security? So this is a great place to start. So look at those buckets that I gave you with all the keywords, questions, prepositions, comparisons, and then put in your keywords. And you can quickly build up quite the list, you know, thousands of questions for just about any niche. And like I said, it's a free tool. You can download them all and then segment them and start to look at where you're going to try to earn the feature snippet, how you're going to format the content, how you're going to optimize it. And you should be able to use this study to do all that. So check out Answer the Public. You're going to really like it if you haven't used it before. The other one that I'm really pumped about right now is SEMrush's Keyword Magic Tool. It's in beta. I've been beta testing it. And you can see here what I've done is I said cloud storage is the keyword that I want to analyze. But then you get a lot of features to break it down. So I said cloud storage, but only include keywords with how. And then you can't see it on the far right, but it says SERP features, one selected, and what I selected was featured snippets. So now the beauty is, and I also said that the cost per click had to be $1, right? So these are commercial keywords that are about cloud storage, that use the word how, that have featured snippets showing for them. And that should, at this point, like pop a light bulb over your head and go, ah, okay. So you can take tools like this. Now I know like Ahrefs and Moz are working on these. I've talked to Ahrefs about this. They're coming out with some cool stuff. So a lot of these providers are all over this as well. I'm just showing you a couple tools because of time. But yeah, go check these out. Grab all the snippets before your competition does, and if they have them, steal them from them. You can frankly you can do that. And we'll talk more about it in the Q&A section as well. But the presentation is pinned at my Twitter. I'm at SEO. Please sling me a retweet. Again, special shout out to SEMrush for being cool to provide the industry with all that, 80 million keyword research. That was really cool of them. And if you have questions later too, hit me up on Twitter. I'm happy to answer them. And I'd love to hear if you earned some featured snippets. I got from my last presentation a lot of emails back from people and tweets back from people saying, hey, I did it and it worked and I earned featured snippets, and it's just cool to hear. So hit me up on Twitter and I'd be happy to chat and connect.